Hello, everybody. My name is Emily Stafford, and you're listening to the Bugging Out Podcast. In the last two episodes, we discussed what insects are and why they're important. We also discussed how land use change plays a role in patterns of declining insect populations. In this episode, we'll cover what we can do as individuals and as a community to reduce our impacts on the local insects. If you remember from our last episode, we talked about the many different factors that are causing a decline in insect populations. And while we as individuals might not be able to stop climate change or halt urban development, we can still take actions that benefit the insects that live around and with us. I'm again joined by Jim McNeil, a professor at the Smithsonian-Mason School of Conservation. Jim, what is something you personally do to reduce your impact on insects, and what can you suggest to others?
Yeah, I love this question because it's one of my favorite things about insect conservation is that it can work on the small scale. Like, you don't have to have hundreds of acres of land to make an impact. And like, we've seen this in our yard. So we live in a city lot, like a fraction of an acre is our yard. Something that we do just really simply is leave like some pieces of firewood sitting out. We don't use them. We don't just sort of have them in the yard. And I've seen native bees using that to lay eggs on. It didn't.
Cool.
No additional purchase necessary. We had to clean up a dead tree, and we left part of it in a corner of the yard, and it's making habitat for things. One of the things I always talk about too, just from a logistical standpoint, is I don't particularly enjoy mowing, and like, one of the best things you can do is just not mow your lawn as frequently. There's even some things you can do with like timing. So like, for instance, we have a ton of dandelions and things in our yard, and they can be a problem, like if they get into like your vegetable beds and things like that. You're always having to go. But what I'll do at our house is I'll wait, and it takes some balance. You have to watch what's going on in your yard, but the dandelions aren't native, but they are a good pollinator source. They're a good nectar source for a lot of bees and things. And so I'll wait when the flowers are still yellow and active. I'll leave them in the yard. Like, I won't mow. I'll let that nectar resource be there, and then sort of right before they go to seed and start to spread everywhere, that's when I'll go in and mow, because the part that I don't want is lots of seeds in my vegetable bed. So, but if I mow right at that point, right before they all go to seed, sort of accomplish two goals at the same time.
One of the best ways to support insect populations is to plant a native garden. Native plants are plants that originated from the area. In my case, it would be plants that are originally from Virginia and Fauquier County. It's been found that one of the major causes of insect decline is the removal of native plants and replacing them with non-native ones. Jim, why aren't non-native plants suitable for insects? I mean, if insects eat plants, why can't they just eat all the plants?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good one to think about. The part of the problem with non-natives is insects are really specific in their host associations, particularly herbivorous insects. So if they're out there, if they're eating a plant, they are really well adapted to deal with that plant's defenses. So plants are not passive. They don't want to be eaten. They are not they haven't evolved to just be eaten passively. So they have lots of chemical defenses, lots of things to deter herbivores from coming after them, including insects. And that's the biggest reason why non-natives aren't good for insects, is because their chemical defenses are too good for our native insect population. It works, that evolution thing works both ways. So the insects are adapted to be able to eat the plants, but that also means that the plants are adapting to sort of deal with the insects. So you have this back and forth. it benefits all of them. So a little bit of plant material is lost. A few insects are deterred by natural defenses, but overall, the whole assemblage does better because they're well adapted to each other. Can native insect species adapt to non-natives? Yes, but it's going to take time for that to occur. And in some cases they may not. It may be easier or more advantageous for that insect to either leave the area or go to another host that's more similar to a native host that they've been on than to use that non-native species, particularly if it's really, really different from what they are adapted to in their native environment. And there's some cases where those differences are essentially insurmountable. The insect host just does not have the variation, or the insect doesn't have enough variation in its population to be able to deal with any of the compounds or defenses that those non-native plants have.
And there are lots of options depending on where you live and what type of insects you want to conserve. Always a good option is milkweed. Not only does it provide food and habitat for the famous monarch butterflies, but it also hosts a multitude of other native pollinator species. There are tons of resources online to help you pick which plants to grow. My personal favorite is plantvirginianatives.org. They have many resources to identify plants native to Virginia and guidance about landscaping and planting. And to go a step further, one of the most effective ways to invoke change is to come together as a community. Be an advocate for sustainable practices and encourage others to start a native plant garden. You could even organize with your HOA to improve lawn habitat for insects. Insects are important, not only to ecosystem health and function, but also to the livelihoods of humans. While scientific research indicated declining insect populations, it's not too late to do something about it. Even the smallest action of growing native plants can benefit local insects. Encourage and educate others about the importance of insects.
One of the reasons I love insects so much is that they are so diverse and there are so many of them that you can literally go into your backyard and find something that you may never have seen before. And that happens to me all the time. And I've spent most of my professional life looking at insects in one way or another. And I can still go into our little backyard plot and find something that I've never seen before, and I have to Google it, and I have to figure out what it is. And it's not that it wasn't there, it's just that sort of opportunity to see it had come up. So I always encourage people, just go out and look for them, and the more you do, the more you're going to find. They're pretty fantastic.
Thank you for listening to the Bugging Out podcast. I hope you learned something, and I hope that you're inspired to go out and plant a native garden.